My 70-year-old and stole from my mom, then her life went up in flames. Mom, you actually gave Sue your debit card? When I heard my mom casually mention this, I let out a strange sound I can still never replicate, a guttural mix of anger, shock, and helplessness, caught somewhere between a scream and a sob. At the time, Mom's foot injury was so severe she could barely walk around the living room without clinging to the walls. Yet she'd handed over her bank card and PIN to her baby sister, all because she felt sorry for Sue, having no money to buy cat food. I specifically told her, go to Dollar Tree, just get cat food, a few days' worth of groceries, and a pack of cigarettes. That's 25 max, Mom said, her voice laced with hindsight regret. But of course she didn't listen. She went to that overpriced chain grocery store and spent $55, then snuck out $20 cash, saying she needed gas. This wasn't the first time Sue had pushed her luck. That nearly 70-year-old woman had never once understood the meaning of boundaries. In her world, her older sister's generosity was her birthright, family's tolerance was a given, and even fate's kindness should bend to her whims. Sue's health was fragile, she survived on disability benefits and lived in low-income housing. A few months earlier, her benefits had been cut due to a paperwork error. Fixing it would have taken one phone call, but she was laziness personified. As Mom put it, her laziness is in her bones, it has nothing to do with her disability. Watching her own sister teeter on the brink of homelessness and hunger, Mom's heart softened. My parents had been saving for retirement, but they scraped together funds to cover nearly all of Sue's expenses: rent, electric bills, gas, groceries, even her daily cigarettes. Yet Sue's disability checks vanished faster and faster, from lasting half the month to barely a week. It was obvious to everyone she was taking more and more advantage of their kindness. I'd tried hinting to Mom, Aunt Sue isn't actually poor, she's just using you as an ATM. But Mom would always sigh and say, she's my only sister. If I don't help her, who will? That debit card was the final straw. When Mom discovered Sue had withdrawn extra cash without permission, months of pent-up frustration exploded. So when Sue showed up at the door, as she always did, playing the hurt feelings card and begging for rides or money, Mom finally grew a backbone. I'm still furious with you. Leave me alone and handle your own problems for once. Spoiled rotten, Sue crumpled like a rag doll without a spine. She collapsed onto the porch steps, her hair wild as dead grass, pounding the concrete, and wailing so loudly it pierced eardrums. You heartless monster. I'm your own sister, are you just going to let me die? She rolled around in the dirt, her pants soaking up mud, spit, and tears flying everywhere. I'm an old woman with no kids. Who else will help me? Don't you remember who climbed trees to get you bird nests? Who gave you the last piece of candy? Now that you're successful, you think you're too good for me. Her screams grew louder as she flailed her legs like a toddler, drawing a crowd of neighbors who stared and whispered, their eyes like needles pricking the front door. When Mom still refused to open up, Sue suddenly jumped to her feet and slammed her head against the security door. Open up. If you don't help me today, I'll kill myself right here. I'll let everyone see what a cold, cruel sister you are. The thunderous bangs shook loose pieces of wall plaster. Mom paled behind the door, but she never wavered. Exhausted, Sue sat on the ground and hurled insults for over 2 hours, from Mom's childhood embarrassments to their ancestors, until her voice turned hoarse and cracked. She stumbled away, kicking over Mom's potted plant on her way out, shattering it into pieces that scattered across the porch. Sue's selfishness and arrogance hadn't developed overnight. In my 25 years of life, her crazy stories could fill a book, each page dripping with cruelty and absurdity. What haunted me most was my 21st birthday party. I'd invited friends and family to celebrate, but Sue spent the entire night making thinly veiled homophobic jokes. She knew I was gay, yet she taunted me in that snide tone. Men should like women, that's nature, being gay is just a phase. Watching my friends shift uncomfortably in their seats, I held back tears and fled my own party. On the drive home, I broke down crying. I couldn't understand why a family member would weaponize my identity to ruin the happiest day of my young adult life. 8 years ago on Easter Sunday, she showed me just how unreasonable she could be. We were eating at a family restaurant when Grandpa mocked the #MeToo movement, laughing and saying, "Women these days are too sensitive, complaining about every little thing." I cut him off immediately. "Grandpa, sexual assault and harassment aren't jokes. Victims shouldn't be mocked." Before I could finish, Sue slammed her fist on the table and screamed at me for 5 solid minutes. "People are allowed to have different opinions. Who do you think you are, forcing everyone to agree with you? Overly sensitive people never amount to anything." Every diner in the restaurant stared at our table. Mom tried to pull her back, but Sue shoved her away. That day, Easter's warm, joyful mood was shattered by her hysteria. Even scarier was her violent streak. The next Easter, my partner and I were living in the basement apartment of Grandpa's house. Our boss stopped by to pick up keys. He was only on the driveway for less than a minute, when Sue, fresh out of Grandpa's car, started screaming obscenities at him. Then she saw my partner coming to greet him and redirected her rage at this stranger, spewing more and more vulgarities. I ran upstairs when I heard the commotion, just in time to see her grab a heavy manual can opener from the kitchen and raise it like she was going to throw it at me. "You're the one who corrupted everyone. You're a lunatic," she shrieked. I was so angry my whole body shook. "You're irrational," I yelled back. She burst into tears and screamed, "I take my meds every day." Her tone was accusatory, as if her tantrums and death threats were everyone else's fault, and she was trying so hard to control herself. She forgot I was also on psychiatric medication. I have ADHD and bipolar disorder, but I'd never used my illness as an excuse to hurt people. Her selfishness knew no bounds when it came to family. She'd once lived rent-free with Grandpa, with the only condition that she clean the house. But she never kept her end of the deal. The stove was caked with months of food residue, the countertops and floors so dirty they stuck to your shoes. Meanwhile, she spent all day lying in bed watching TV, treating Grandpa's house like a free hotel. Worse yet, she stole thousands of dollars from Grandpa to buy scratch-off lottery tickets. When he kicked her out, they found hundreds of losing tickets stashed in her bedroom. For 2 years, Christmas decorations hung in the living room year-round because she couldn't be bothered to put them away. In the end, Mom had to step in and clean the house herself. She couldn't bear to see her father living in such squalor. But that wasn't Mom's job. It was Sue's responsibility, and she deliberately neglected it. Eventually, Grandpa kicked her out. I can't remember the exact reason, but I'd witnessed firsthand how she'd punch a visitor's car hood until her knuckles turned red when she flew into a rage. She saw a therapist, though I doubt it did any good. Mom's complete cutoff threw Sue into a panic. No more easy money, no more free rides, not even a shred of the constant attention she'd grown used to. But instead of reflecting on her mistakes, she doubled down on her demands. She started using her declining health to manipulate Mom. Once she called sobbing, claiming she couldn't get up from the toilet and begging Mom to drive 45 minutes to help her. Mom's heart softened, and she dragged herself there despite her injured foot, only to find a neighbor had already helped Sue. It was just another ploy to get Mom's attention and re-establish control. This pattern repeated itself over and over. One day she'd claim she had no food, the next that her electricity was about to be cut off, even lying about being sick to get Mom to drive her to the hospital. But Mom stood firm. Besides occasionally having my stepdad drop off groceries, she ignored all of Sue's pleas. Months later, Mom dropped a bombshell: "Sue's in the hospital. She has lung cancer." I felt no sympathy, only a cold, grim sense of closure. That woman who'd spent her entire life caring only about herself had finally gotten her comeuppance from fate. While in the hospital, Sue called Mom one last time, asking her to pick up some belongings from her apartment. Mom agreed, but instead of taking them to Sue's hospital room, she left them at the front desk and drove away. In that moment, I knew our sisterhood was over, Mom told me, her voice as calm as if she were talking about a stranger. After that, Mom cut off all contact with Sue. I sent Sue's calls to voicemail and muted her texts. Our family finally escaped the shadow she'd cast over us for so long. Mom and my stepdad focused on preparing for retirement. They planned to move across the country to Idaho and start fresh. My partner and I settled into a peaceful life, no longer living in fear of Sue's sudden outbursts. Sue's cancer progressed quickly, and she was soon transferred to hospice care. But her selfishness never wavered. She'd convinced the staff to let her receive hospice at home, solely because nursing homes don't allow smoking. Even in her final days, she prioritized her own comfort over her health. A neighbor had been helping her with errands and chores, though I'll never understand why. But by then, it no longer mattered to us. We'd exhausted all our emotional energy on that 25-year-long cycle of family coercion. I thought that would be the end of Sue's story, lonely, forgotten, and finally forced to face the consequences of her life of selfishness. But fate had a crueler plan. One October day, Mom called me, her voice strange and complicated. "Sue's gone. She died in a fire." I froze. It took me a long time to process what "gone" meant. Mom explained the fire department's report. The blaze had started in Sue's apartment, caused by a cigarette. Even while on oxygen, she'd refused to quit smoking. She'd even tampered with the oxygen tank's safety valve to smoke more easily. When the fire broke out, her advanced lung cancer left her too weak to escape. She'd choked on smoke, clawing at the floor until her fingernails were broken and caked with charred wood and ash, dying and despairing as the flames consumed her. The fire didn't just kill Sue, it destroyed 3 floors of the apartment building, leaving 10 families homeless, including a pair of 1-year-old twins. Their crib was burned to a crisp, and though their parents had rescued them just in time, the babies were so traumatized they cried through every night. I clicked on the news link Mom sent. The headline read, "Davenport Fire Department extinguishes apartment blaze, 1 fatality confirmed." The photos showed the aftermath: blackened walls, shattered windows hanging loosely, piles of burned furniture on the sidewalk, firefighters hosing down smoldering embers. Sue's name wasn't mentioned, only the time, location, and basic details of the fire. But I knew. That victim was Sue. Her body was found curled in a corner, burned beyond recognition. They'd only identified her by a cheap ring she'd worn for years. In the end, her selfishness cost her everything. A single cigarette had ended her life and ruined the homes of innocent neighbors. It was a cruel, ironic end, a final judgment for a lifetime of greed and cruelty. In the days after hearing the news, I felt numb. I'd thought I'd feel relief, satisfaction that karma had finally caught up to her. But instead, I was overwhelmed by conflicting emotions. I hated her 25 years of selfishness, hated her for mocking my sexuality, hated her for threatening my partner, hated her for draining Mom's life away. Yet when I closed my eyes, fragments of memories would surface. When I was little, she'd taken me to the park and bought me a cotton candy with crumpled dollar bills. When I'd had a fever in winter, she'd tucked my hands into her warm coat pocket. How gentle she'd been with her cat, cooing softly as she fed it, brushing its fur gently, moments of tenderness I'd almost forgotten. I found myself wondering, had her selfishness stemmed from some deep void? Had she spent her life taking because she'd never known what it was like to be truly loved? That mix of hatred and pity wrapped around me like a net, suffocating me. I'd wanted her to pay for what she'd done, but never like this. Never with such suffering. I felt no joy, only an empty, hollow confusion. Mom was even calmer than I was. She'd simply stated the facts over the phone, no tears, no anger, as if she were telling me about the weather. I knew it wasn't indifference. It was freedom. After a lifetime of being dragged down by her sister, she could finally let go and live for herself. Later, we learned the full story from the fire department. Sue hadn't intentionally started the fire while on oxygen. She'd fallen asleep with a lit cigarette, which had smoldered in the mattress before erupting into flames. She'd died from smoke inhalation, in her sleep, no pain, no fear. When I heard that, I let out a breath I didn't know I'd been holding. I'd hated what she'd done, but I'd never wanted her to suffer. Months have passed since Sue's death. The 10 displaced families found temporary housing with community help, and the twins' nightmares eventually faded. Her cat is thriving with its new owner, still chubby, still napping in the sun by the window. My family and I have settled in Idaho. We have a big lawn, clean air, and Mom smiles more than I've ever seen her smile. My stepdad goes fishing every weekend. We're finally free from the past, living the peaceful life we'd always dreamed of. Sometimes, on quiet evenings, I still think of Sue. I think of her screaming tantrums, her irrational rage, her greedy thefts. But I also think of that cotton candy, her warm coat pocket, her gentle hands brushing her cat's fur. She was a terrible person, a monster, even. But she was also a tragedy. A woman who'd lived her entire life trapped in her own self-absorption, unable to love or be loved, ultimately dying alone and consumed by the very selfishness that had defined her. This experience has taught me more about human nature than any book ever could. Humanity isn't black and white, it's a murky gray area. Sue had darkness in her, selfishness, cruelty, greed. But there were flickers of light too, tiny, fleeting moments of kindness. Her life was a tragedy of character and choice. She'd believed family was a license to take without giving, that love meant never having to say thank you or I'm sorry. But the truth is, all relationships, even blood ties, require mutual respect, gratitude, and boundaries. We all have flaws. We're all capable of selfishness, laziness, or greed. But what defines us is whether we choose to confront those flaws, to grow, to be better. Sue never did. She let her worst impulses control her, and in the end, they destroyed her. Karma isn't some cosmic punishment, it's the natural consequence of our choices. Every time we choose kindness over cruelty, gratitude over greed, respect over arrogance, we shape a better version of ourselves. Every time we choose the opposite, we chip away at our own humanity. Sue's story is a mirror. It shows us the danger of letting selfishness fester, of ignoring boundaries, of taking love for granted. It also reminds us that even the most damaged people are capable of moments of goodness, though those moments don't erase the harm they've caused. I hope, wherever Sue is now, she's finally learned how to love. How to give instead of take. How to be kind. But for the rest of us, her legacy is a warning: cherish the people who love you, respect their boundaries, and never mistake generosity for weakness. And when someone repeatedly takes advantage of your kindness, when they drain your energy, hurt your loved ones, and refuse to change, sometimes the kindest thing you can do is walk away. Life is too short to be trapped in toxic relationships. Too precious to waste on people who don't value you. We owe it to ourselves to protect our peace, to nurture the love that lifts us up, and to let go of the darkness that drags us down. Rest in peace, Aunt Sue. I won't miss you. But I hope, somewhere, someone does. I hope you've finally found the peace you never knew in life.